Good evening and welcome back to another episode of TLC TV, the technology entertainment show brought to you by Relate Group and the Technology Leaders Club. This week we are joined by Head of Cyber and Information Security for Aston Martin, it's Robin Smith. And welcome to the show, Strategic Account Manager for BlackBerry, it's Robin Wright. And completing our panel, it's Group Information Security Officer for Barbican Insurance, it's James McKinley. And as always, our live VIP front row guest joining us via Zoom. Closing the show for us this week, we have stand-up comedy from one of the stars of Live at the Apollo and Mock the Week. It's Milton Jones. Yes, welcome back to another episode of TLC TV. This week we will be discussing the evolution of the endpoint. From standalone machines to global networking, the endpoint is one of many evolving parts of business operation. Discussing this on our panel is Robin Smith, Robin White and James McKinley. Welcome to you all. So thank you all for joining us today.
Pleasure.
You look very comfortable on chairs that actually fit you. Seriously, I feel like I'm one of those adults that's forced to play with a bunch of kids at a tea party is going to break one of their chairs. I want to come to you first, Robin Smith. We're going to call Robin and the other Robin. You'll see why. So, call Robin Smith. Working for Aston Martin, what was day one like? Because you think at Apple you get a load of free tech, Nike you get some trainers. What do you get at Aston Martin?
Well, I'm pleased to say on day one at 9 a.m. I was handed over the keys to my own locker. And that locker contained what my niece calls a load of swag. So I got hats and face masks and bottles, most of which have now been distributed to family members.
Right, so you got a load of stuff to make you look like you have the car without actually having the car.
That's what happened.
And something else about you, you're an award-winning filmmaker. Tell us a little bit about that.
I am. Well, I've always been a film head, and in 2018 I decided to make my own feature documentary. So we made a film about the immortal technologies, and that was released in 2020. Feature documentary went to New York Film Festival, the Sound and Vision International Film Festival, and it won the Gold Award, much to my surprise. So very pleased with that. The Netflix millions haven't rolled in though, so part two, that's what we're aiming for, a big fat check.
Oh, so welcome Robin Smith. And Robin Wright, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, how long have you been working for BlackBerry? How long have you been in the industry?
18 years.
Right, and what about sort of outside? It's now turned into a job interview, isn't it? So, welcome. What do you know about the company? Tell us about your hobbies and interests.
So mountain biking, running, sort of fitness, you know, trying to keep off the COVID-19.
When you say mountain biking, do you mean like mountains or going to the shop?
Definitely mountains.
Right, so actually extreme
Proper,
sort of mountain biking, right. How long have you been doing that?
Since a kid, so 20 plus years.
20 plus years.
Down a mountain.
Okay.
30.
30 plus. And James, welcome. You've had a long history in the cyberspace. You've mediated panels, spoken at various events. One thing I learned about you today: you have 4 kids under the age of 6. Is that why you're here? Do you just need to get out?
It's no surprise you'd be left thinking that, but absolutely, my kids are really amazing, and I would have loved to have brought them here today. But the two eldest...
You don't have to lie, they're not watching this.
No, if I had brought them here today, you would not have been able to cope with it.
That's what I was thinking. 4 kids, like, what were you thinking? I've got 2, and I don't like either one of them.
Well, it's a little bit more than the 5-a-side football team.
Well, welcome to everyone. This is the panel for today, everybody. So this episode is all about the endpoint, and in preparation for this, we took to social media to hear your thoughts at home. We asked a series of questions, and here are the answers that you gave us. So the first question that we asked is, how would you describe the last decade in regard to the evolution of the endpoint? We've got Milos Pesic from Markin joining us via Zoom.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, how are you doing? Welcome.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so how would you describe the last decade?
Well, the last decade was pretty amazing, to be honest, at least for cybersecurity from many perspectives, especially when it comes to endpoint security evolution. 10 years ago, plus there were talks about EDR stuff being established. A few years later, that actually happened. Now, we can use endpoint security to utilize so many different tools, from DLP, NDR tools, all sorts of different types of connections and integration. It's just amazing where we've come from 10 years ago into now. It's pretty simple to actually make a company secure. Doesn't matter the size, it will help. It will actually expand the capabilities of any cybersecurity team.
Have you guys found it you've all got very different backgrounds in the fields that you work, so how has the endpoint really changed for you?
I think I'm going to disagree. I think it's been quite chaotic. We've had this technology that has taken the velocity of organizations through the roof.
Yeah.
And we've often been kind of reacting to the technology or reacting to the innovations in cybercrime. So for me, there's been a lot of defensive work. We take into account the opportunities there, but a lot of the last decade has been about reasserting security for these new devices that have emerged.
So do you think we're always going to be, as security professionals, always one step behind the technology itself?
I think it's somewhat inevitable. I don't think that security practitioners often get involved in innovation talks. You often find security bolted on to the end of that process. I'd like to see a situation where we're involved from day one, rather than having to adopt a defensive posture.
Okay. And Robin, you're very much on the forefront of that development. How have you found the last 10 years?
So I'd agree somewhat with Milos's view and equally with Robin's. I think there's this balance between organizations almost letting the endpoint become that sacrificial lamb, and that it's gone. It's let's bring the defense back in-house and sort of leave those endpoints to be kind of gone. And actually, the reason I joined Silence was that it was about bringing back that capability. The machines have got so much horsepower now that they've become that element of telemetry out there that actually gives that early warning, that then suddenly you can start doing things with it more than, oh no, I've clicked on the link, and oh no, I've suddenly lost 5,000 devices to WannaCry, Zeus, whatever is out there. But the chaos is huge. It's 100 million pieces of malware a year, something like that. It's 500,000 a day get created. So the battle is, our threat research team work very hard every single day.
And James, what are your thoughts?
I think we've seen a lot of things that we've had to consider in the last 10 years in terms of where the endpoint is going. You think about 10 years ago, would we be thinking of a smartwatch that you could order on an online shop and have delivered the next day, that read your calendar, that was held in a SaaS service somewhere? That wasn't what we were thinking when we were looking at Server 2008, talking to Windows XP with a desktop in an office. So the people who lead organizations who want to move away from desktops to laptops, or laptops to tablets, and tablets to smartphones, security has to keep up and has to think, how has that change weakened my position, or what extra layers can I put in so that I don't feel it's weakened? So I think we have to keep up and let the business leaders experiment with this moving forward, this moving away from bums on seats in the office to people getting calendar alerts on their watch. I think security has to keep up.
So do you think with security trying to keep up, do you think that breaches are inevitable? Because you think, as you said, you've got people writing 500 million new threats every day. They've only got to get lucky the once, whereas security professionals, you have to be lucky all the time. So do you think breaches are inevitable?
I would say it depends, classic consultant answer. But the breach is inevitable is not for everyone. It might be for 99%, and it might be 100% of enterprise class organizations. But if you've got a small startup outfit that has hired for security and invested in security, then the people trying to get in might skip over them and go after everyone else who hasn't invested in security skills or security solutions.
Okay.
But it might be that breaches are to be somewhat encouraged, because I think I've been part of incident responses that were revealed not just insight into that incident, but a wider security issue that we previously didn't know about. So I think actually incidents can be quite a positive force within an organisation.
Right, okay. That brings us on to the second question, actually. So endpoint security, reactive versus proactive. What do you think is needed to bridge that gap? And we had Sean McKim from Regina Airport Authority joining us via Zoom.
Hi there, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you doing?
Excellent, I'm doing well. Welcome, hello from Canada. I look at it as, since we have such a diversity of endpoints, seems increasingly important that we establish asset management practices, classify assets from a risk management point of view, and try to avoid being reactive. So being involved early, like Robin Smith said, that's a key thing to me. We need to bake security in during the early design stages. Then I think we stand a better chance of adapting and tailoring capabilities to protect assets before an incident occurs. Like, without knowing what assets we have, how important they are, we're more likely to experience unpleasant surprises and then be forced into doing triage during an incident. So, tying some level, whatever level of automation you can to identifying and classifying assets, that's important to me. That's what I seek in products and partners, because nobody enjoys trying to build an aircraft while it's flying and losing altitude.
What do you guys think? What's your responses to that?
I think that's spot on. I think you have to position yourself that things happen. Change is fairly constant. So security practitioners need to be aware that we're defending, we're responding, we're remediating. And the best cybersecurity practitioners can work across that space and have an array of tactics to meet the kind of demands in each of those situations.
Okay.
I think there's also that trying to join more of these things together. And I think that's where the biggest change over the last 10 years is trying to bring these things together. So you actually get, you were talking about the watch. It's about joining the chains of these things together. And you touched on it talking about incidents. It's actually looking at the supply chain that an organization has. It's not just an inside, oh no, we've got to go back and do a remediation. It's actually what's our weakest links outside of our organization that we've got to map against. So there's a lot of integration that's happened in the last 10 years, and there still needs to be more going forward.
Okay. Speaking of integration, again, these are very good points because you lead straight onto the next one, where you're thinking endpoint security versus the end user security awareness. That was the third question we asked. How important is this? And we had John Wellworth from Virgin Care join us via Zoom. John?
Hello there.
Hello, mate. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thank you. So yeah, the security versus end user security is a fine balance for me. What I find is that when you put too much security in a user's way that they feel blocks them from achieving what they need to achieve, they find a way around it. They work around your security programs, and it completely decimates what you're trying to do. So you've got to keep the security almost as invisible as possible to the end user, which then requires the end user to actually be aware. And that's the challenge, because they may not care about that. And an accountant would care about their tax returns, and we may not be as caring about that because that's what they do. But they feel the same about us, that that's our job. So it is that challenge of putting the right amount of technology in place that protects them and challenges them, but doesn't block them from doing their work, because otherwise they work around you and all of your security defenses are gone.
Okay, James, I'm going to come to you for this one as well.
I like a lot of what I've just heard there, especially about making it as invisible as possible to the user, so that they don't feel like you're putting up blockers and getting in the way. I think that security leaders and planners, security architects, people should do as much prevention as possible, but also expect the business to have to be able to carry on the way they like working. So find a way of adding layers of protection that don't get in the user's way of what they're used to. So if they like Excel, find a way to let them stay with Excel. If they like Dropbox, let them stick with Dropbox if that works for your security model. Or move them, say if you need to do sharing, don't create your own ways that going round the controls. Come to us and together we'll put something in and teach you how to use it. That's the other thing. Teach them why you're going down this path. If you're going down secure messaging or secure file sharing or something, teach them why. And maybe give them some teachable moments that they can take home and improve their home life. And maybe something in simple terms that they can pass on around their family. So that your auntie learns when you go home and ask her if she's using a password manager. Now, password managers might be really complicated when you first hear the topic, but if you can find a way of breaking it down as this is why it's important and this is a simple way of working with it, and that way makes you better off than you were. Think about continuous improvement, think about really helpful, take this home, make your home life secure messaging, and make it as invisible as possible by putting in lots of very smart prevention and detection for when it goes wrong. That's
what about the, more of the awareness side, some keeping people up to date on what are the threats and being knowledgeable on that part so they still know about it? And do you think that would be something that would help mitigate the risk as well?
I think that lots of little, really current, informative pieces of news will help most people, not everybody.
Yeah.
The people who ignore your messaging will always ignore your messaging. You need to come up with a plan B for dealing with those people, find them and deal with them in a different way. People who don't ignore your messaging, lots of little hints, something on a Friday afternoon before they go home, something very visual, 60 seconds on YouTube or Vimeo, something like that is going to lift everyone a lot quicker and be a lot more helpful and be approachable. Whether it's a phone number, whether it's when we're back in the office, sweets on the end of your desk, let people come over and talk to you, or give you a ring, give you a Teams message and say, I've seen this, what do you think? Because the reporting of what's going on, what got through your preventative measures, is as helpful into tuning your preventative measures and tuning your awareness program as than them deleting it and pretending it never happened.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have time for in this section, but we will be back in just a moment where we will talk to you at home, find a little bit more about you and the panel we have here. So we shall see you after the break.
Seven years ago, we started on a security journey. We were doing a lot of handset at the time, and we switched that to more of a software orientation and become a software company, a security software company.
For over 30 years, BlackBerry has secured and protected people and information through changing demands and vast transformation. We've created a cutting-edge artificial intelligence engine that learns faster, reacts faster. This AI engine powers all of our solutions at BlackBerry.
5G, IoT, autonomous vehicles. It's projected more than 67 billion connected threat points in 2025. All of that needs to be protected.
Welcome back to TLC TV. Before the break, we have been discussing the evolution of the endpoint, but also getting to know our panel. Robin Wright, you mentioned that I want to ask this, you mentioned you do the mountain biking. Like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you on a mountain bike?
I was in Leger in '99, coming down the final, like the end of the run that was a World Cup run there, and there was all these like pro riders, so kind of your heroes when I was growing up, and then like having a crash in front of them and being laughed at, you know, trying to then take you. That's scarred.
How bad was the crash? Are we talking cartoon crash?
It was quite a big spill. There was a bit of blood.
Did you knock over anybody else?
No. It was all.
So out of all the people doing it, it was just you that fell over. Oh, that's do you know what? That's very much my rule in comedy, because I find that everything is funny until it happens to you. So having all of them people, I definitely would. How badly were you hurt? I should ask that first.
I cut all my arm. I had knee pads and stuff on, so yeah. Wasn't hospitalised, so that's good.
And James, you're part of a networking group.
Right, thanks for bringing that up. I think that networking, sharing, collaborating is really, really, really important, building the community. So I've created a chat group that started off on Telegram and moved to a private chat server. And we gave it quite a name that was entertaining to me at the time, and it's stuck and it's growing. And we've called it "Where's the F in SecOps?" Of course, SecOps doesn't have an F in it, but say it fast enough and you'll get.
What time is it?
Is this going out before the watershed?
And Robin, so with filming, so I haven't like you once interviewed the wrong person.
Oh, it's not quite that. It was I turned up to the Sheffield Documentary Film Festival in 2018 with my first documentary feature, and it got a modest reception. And I was kind of walking around feeling sorry for myself. And I walked into the digital marketplace, which is where they actually sell films that are at the festival. And I was immediately greeted by this very effusive American producer who said, "Robin Smith, I've seen your film, it's fantastic, I'm really pleased, we're really interested in a deal." And I was like, this is amazing, this is great. I didn't realise that my film was making such an impact. And he went on for 5-10 minutes, but he kept going on about the bit on the farm. And I was thinking, well, my film's about the digital collapse, there's no farm on it. It turned out, after about 9.5 minutes, there was another filmmaker called Robin Smith there, and it was his film that was kind of being mentioned by this American guy, and it was his film that was bought and distributed in North America, and unfortunately my very modest feature sat on the shelf for that entire festival. So since then, whenever I get a producer come to me, it's just, I get my wallet out, and here's my driving licence, here's my blood type, here's my passport, so I won't make that mistake again.
Sure. Which point did you find out it was like when you gone wrong? Did you carry on or just stop it there?
I carried on because I thought, well, he doesn't know what he's buying. I've got something to sell. And I kind of thought, once the ink's on the check, well, it's his fault. So buyer beware. So, yeah, I must admit, I twigged quicker than he did. He twigged in the end, unfortunately. So yeah, well, maybe next time.
And perhaps, gents, I want to find out a little bit more about this networking group. So what's the size of this networking group? Because I think you're absolutely right. Networking and sharing information is integral to what we all do.
Yeah, it's growing by people. It started off as like mates, and it grows by people inviting people. So if anyone who's not in it, who wants to know about it, reach out to me. But it's a very there's a very low threshold for people saying stupid things. It's about news, it's about gossip, but some of the laws are Hanlon's razor and Wheaton's law. And I'll leave the audience to go up and look up what Hanlon's razor and Wheaton's law are. But do you know Wheaton's law?
I do not know. I need to know what Wheaton's law is now.
Right, it's another one for after the watershed.
Okay, for this part of the show, we will be talking to you watching at home and our virtual front row. So we've been taking questions from all of you at home throughout the show to ask the panel. Our first question comes from, let's have a look, Senior Manager of Information Security, Federico from Securius. Federico, how you doing? What's your question? Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Now you can hear me a little bit better. Okay. I start again and maybe now hopefully we'll get better. So good afternoon everyone.
Good afternoon.
So my question is about information security awareness. And my question is, what are your thoughts about information security awareness as a method to raise the level of security and slow the spread of cyber threats?
I'll take that one if I may. I think when you see that the Ponemon Institute are saying that 60 to 70% of incidents arise from human failures, failures in the human firewall, it proves that we can't just divorce the users from our processes. And James talked really eloquently about this concept of digital literacies. It's 2021. Maybe our users should know about security protection. For my organisation, vigilance is a value, and we try and train those skills into our staff because they are at the sharp end with business email compromise and malware. We need them to be pretty robust in their awareness of why security is important.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I do think that email gets most of the attention, but it's not just email. So a security awareness program should hint at other things that, well, basically, if criminals want something off you, if they think they can make money out of you, the different approaches they'll take. So there's SMS links saying you need to pay missing postage on Royal Mail. There are websites that are surrounded by adverts and the advertising networks are being compromised. So there's every channel you might engage with and any device. I know the ransomware gangs don't see any value in locking your Amazon Fire Stick, but there must be a way to, but they do like stealing your Netflix creds. So every device and every piece of personal information is of value and could go out the door.
Because it's not just the digital security, is it? It's the physical element as well. Because if I want to get into an actual building and take a physical hard drive, that's something that's actually quite easy for some people to do in some instances, isn't it?
It's actually quite fun to do if you're a cybersecurity practitioner.
Wrong
and you've
episode
kind of,
for this.
no, hear me out.
It's not.
Hear me out, which is...
Don't do that.
I've actually done this at every organisation I've worked with.
Stop it.
Believe me, it works.
But having worked, I worked at an organisation that the reconnaissance that went into an actual breach, they had, it was the biggest of its kind at the time, and they went into the hills around where the office was, and they'd found listening equipment targeted at the building to work out the conversations that people were having and to work out who those individuals were for, like the super admins, those folks to target, and then start it, a proper level of sophistication.
One thing about security remediation, this is something that I found very much within my time in cybersecurity. One of the big problems is, and I think, I don't know how if this is still relevant now, but I think one of the big problems is a lot of people don't actually know who to report a breach to. Would you say that's fair, or have you seen that?
That's a key element of, if you're in an enterprise, a key element of corporate messaging should be, see it, report it. If you don't like it, report it. It doesn't matter if you report the wrong thing. I was talking about response rates. I'm not talking about phishing simulations, those kind of games and those kind of charts to put in your board reports. I'm talking about really helping the place be more secure by helping your users. And do encourage them to report things with a completely blame-free. It doesn't matter if you report the wrong thing. That is essential to extend your eyes and ears out across the organisation. IT might be 5% of a company's workforce and security might be 0.5% of that 5%. But you want the whole workforce looking for things that are a bit odd and reporting it to you.
So do you think that plays a part? People don't say anything because they don't want to take the blame for what has happened?
Historically, I bet there's been many times when people have clicked something, thought, I've been told not to click things, I'll just delete it, pretend it didn't happen. And something is on their machine and it's off and running through your network. There will be many, many cases of that. And you don't want that in your organisation. So you have to have a real open door, open ears, come and tell us what you don't like approach.
Yeah, you need a permanent campaign in every organisation to say that, to try and change some of these behaviours they're kind of legacy behaviours. We're moving forward into the next decade. We need users that are aware that they're responsible. That doesn't mean they're to blame. And it goes back to that idea of vigilance being a value, making sure that you report, you use these instances to inform the organisation, and that the organisation then speaks into the staff to say, this happened, this was the impact, and this is what we're doing. Because I think that's the way you drive kind of learning in an organisation.
Something that's cut in for just this one point, something that's working really well in our organisation is if someone reports something that wasn't a simulation and wasn't picked up by the filters, we thank them and then we talk about it in various groups. We go, this team are all on it. This thing got through, they reported it to us, so we removed it from every mailbox it had landed in. Thank you very much, you're really on top of the good behaviours.
Maybe
we feed it back.
Maybe some Amazon vouchers or something like that to kind of...
click here to redeem your vouchers.
Through the roof, so...
I think it also, I was just going to say, I think it also comes from some of the maturity in organisations at the, at the top table that security gets its voice. And so when I've been involved with customers that have had a breach, and then we produce the report, that report is given its due time at the table to then talk about, and actually people are aware of it. It's not just IT did a thing. It gets its right conversation, and people then learn from it, and they just try and comes back to that thing. Isn't it the bad?
Right, thanks.
Bad breach.
Thank you very much for that question. Question 2, we have from Matthew Browning, who's Head of Cyber Oversight for Direct Line Group. Matthew, joining us via Zoom.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, just wanted to pose the question, how do we ensure, while we're protecting the diverse set of endpoints, that we don't impact the services or operational capability of the environment?
So I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Robin. So the way in which our technology is architected, and I think that comes back to the evolution, is making something that's lightweight and designed to be implemented without user interference, and also stop I've just installed something, I now got this reminder saying I need to do a reboot when you're right in the middle of something really important.
Yeah.
So better architected products are helping that lack of interference, if that makes sense. And that's critical when we're deploying to hundreds of thousands of endpoints. We can't take systems offline. That's a big issue.
I agree. I think that the days of big, clunky executables, which are slow to update, difficult to patch, those have to be gone. And if you're trialing new solutions, anything that looks like that should not make it through the cut. So things that have a very light agent that have been thought of with security architecture and minimal impact to the end user experience is essential. So yes, you can't do it without something on an endpoint, but make it as small, light, secure, can't be hijacked by the malicious actors. There's so many stories of malware impersonating antivirus products, or even hijacking paths to load libraries of products.
I was going to ask, so as from the manufacturer developer point of view then, how much of these kind of opinions for you guys comes from the end user that you take on board into your products?
Oh, loads. Yeah, it's critical that is a differentiator to what we do in terms of that lightness of agent, because we're looking at, and it's really interesting, the pandemic has shone a light on organizations having a lot of legacy, and a lot of those are super critical systems running large manufacturing lines. You can't deploy something that's going to interfere with it. You've got agents that are aging from the legacy world. They're trying to get that stuff off. and the large operating system manufacturers aren't updating that stuff anymore. So there's this gap of vulnerability, which we help address in a number of situations. So yeah, that was one of our core tenets, was lightweight, because the industry had been getting to that point of really fat clients, 300-400 meg installs. Just can't do that if you've got a user on a tiny internet connection now working from anywhere. So
I think one of the things you also need is, when you get issues with deployment, you need a quick arbitration. One of the things is, we're never going to have this utopian environment where everything gets deployed seamlessly. So when there are problems, you need the IT department and the end users to be able to have an informed conversation quickly and effectively, so you can actually return to sort of business ops.
Okay, and the last question that we had is from Cloud Security Architect from Admiral Group, Abhishek Vyas.
Hi everyone. It's abs for short next time, so it makes it a bit easier to say.
Oh, do you know, I was thinking that abs would have been much.
Yeah, they're in the making. Maybe a few more gym sessions after lockdown might help. So, question from me. As I work in the insurance sector, keen to get your views on what endpoints mean for things that move, like cars, droids, endpoints, that sort of thing. So, yeah, because currently we're talking about endpoints related to computers, stationary devices. What's the future when we're talking about drones and cars and robots and that sort of stuff?
That's a good question, because I think the endpoint has hugely changed now. So it's not just a laptop. You think it's your phone, it's your iPad, now it's your car, it's a drone, it's anything like that. So how do we protect those things that are on the move?
I think for Aston Martin, we're aware that our network boundaries is dissolved. Our cars are our boundary and they're global. And what's required is really good quality security controls, really good protective monitoring to make sure that we get intelligence from our assets out in the field so we can quickly detect. And we would need really good kind of remediation process to make sure that we're going to get assets hit, we're going to have new zero-day threats. We need really good detection and response to make sure that there's no disruption to the use of that asset.
Okay. I know this is something that you guys are very sort of hot, that's a hot topic for you guys. So how are you approaching this?
So BlackBerry acquired a company called QNX, or QNX, we were talking about it earlier, so I might get told off about how I pronounce it. So it's installed in 175 million cars, and so it's hardening the operating system inside the car. So a Jaguar Land Rover has it. You can remote control to your car, turn the climate control on, move the seats around. Super useful in cold and hot climates. But yeah, it's a big part of, again, it comes back to that telemetry we were talking about earlier, that the endpoint isn't just laptop, desktop, server, it's a phone, it's a watch, it's a car. It's just going to get bigger. And that's probably, again, back to the big evolution, is it's suddenly become even more than just what you could literally put your hands on. It's sat on your driveway or in the sky.
And everything, well, talking about in the sky, everything is getting so connected. I was thinking satellites, space stations, who's protecting them? And I was thinking connected cars, some are worth more than others. How many Nissan Leafs does it take to get to the latest Aston Martin? And there must be people in the criminal underworld who are trying to think, how can we steal these high-value cars by hacking into them? So surely your security program has to get involved with the, hopefully, ethical hackers. You need to hire people who just live and breathe breaking processes and noughts and ones to see where the gaps are so that they can be engineered out.
We actually have a lab where we conduct that sort of offensive testing on new cars coming off of the production line, and it's a valuable kind of dimension to our testing.
Yeah, it's not money wasted if it stops people stealing 100 grand, 200 grand cars by just, walking up with a laptop and a Wi-Fi card.
Do you think every company could benefit from offensive testing?
Not necessarily, because if you think about the lawyer's office, solicitor's office on the high street, they do a bit of printing, they do a bit of sharing confidential data. Do they need a pen test? No, they probably just need an MSP or an IT service provider that has security is in its foundations. You've got to think of not just the businesses you know in terms of the enterprises that you've got sat here and sat in the audience. You think about small and medium business that the police cyber resilience centres might be trying to do outreach for. Think about, and also think about other countries. Don't think UK, Europe, the West. Think about how things are done around the world and what internet there might be. I was talking about space stations. What about who's protecting the satellites? Who's updating the firmware on the satellites? And is satellite the only way to get a VoIP call in the Sahara? You know, think outside what you've grown up with or been presented with, is another thing I would say.
So then the risk in size is going to be in relation to the size of the business then?
I think it depends on context. I don't think all information is born equal, and Jason makes a really good point that some firms have really valuable assets in terms of information. Some make cars, some make technology. I think it's about the context. It's about your history. You know, if you've been attacked before, it's very possible that you'll be attacked again. And if cyber criminals, who are an innovative bunch, if they see pound signs on that organisation, well, they're going to approach that and attack that repeatedly, and it's important that organisations appreciate that point.
How can these organisations then figure out where they sit in the hierarchy of data, how important the data is to what kind of solutions they should be using?
Well, one of the things that we use is open source intelligence. You know, you might not know yourself, but if you go and have a look at things like the dark web using appropriate agents, you might get a profile for your organisation. So I worked for a nuclear agency that actively harvested open source information to work out where are we within the league table of kind of likely candidates for attack, what's out there in terms of information, and how do we improve our defence.
Okay, thank you. It's time for our last commercial break, after which we will be back with stand-up comedy from Milton Jones. So we shall see you shortly. Thank you to all of you joining us this week, and thank you to our panel for some great discussions and your questions from home. Make sure you tune in to catch up with us next month on the 22nd of July. Until then, playing us out is stand-up comedian Milton Jones.
Good evening, nerds. Lovely to be here. Things are getting better. The other day I saw sheep pole dancing in a kebab shop. I spent the whole of lockdown in my parents' house. It was strange looking into my neighbour's garden where I used to steal apples as a toddler. They didn't mind me stealing apples. It was dressing up as a toddler they thought was weird. Anyway, bit of a bad week last week. I got offered a part in a film by Robin Smith. I thought that's probably just the cybersecurity guy. Turns out it's a really good producer. Oh, thanks, that doesn't normally work. Milton Jones isn't my whole name. My whole name is Milton 79 Heathfield Road Jones, because my dad heard you could save tax if you put your house in your son's name. This morning I put a lock on the front of my house to slow down burglars who arrived by barge. No one turned up to the first meeting of the sarcasm club I invented, despite loads of people saying how much they were looking forward to it. But of course, COVID-19 has been to this planet before. Oh yes, it was responsible for the extinction of the T-Rex. Not directly, Oh no, all the other dinosaurs attacked it because its arms were too short to clap for the NHS. Sometimes people ask me where I get my shirts. Once a year, I travel to the Himalayas. I walk 4 days into the mountains. I climb one particular mountain. There's a cave at the top. There's a hermit who lives in it. And he orders them for me on the internet. You need to know something, ladies and gentlemen. I've just come back from America. All the way across on the flight, my wife was going, "Why don't you get an upgrade? Why don't you get an upgrade?" Took a bit of time, but in the end, I got a better wife. When I was in America, I really got into the culture. I went into a shop and the guy said, "Have a nice day," and I didn't, so I sued him. When I was in America, I saw one of those very, 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 very large Americans. He said he fitted kitchens. I said, "I bet you don't." When I was in America, I went up to this girl. I said, "What's your name?" She said, "Chantel." I said, "Well, if you're not going to tell me your name." Eventually, I got a job teaching in America. Geography is a foreign language. I've just come back from Australia. While I was there, I learned some Aboriginal words like boo, which means to return. Because when you throw an ordinary meringue, boomerang. I didn't think much of the film, though, on the plane coming back from Australia. Turned out to be a 24-hour animation of a plane travelling from Sydney to London. Whatever you do, don't go and see Time to Destination. So, nerds, you notice that if you Google the phrase "lost medieval servant boy," it says this page cannot be found. Oh yes, like you, I used to be into tech stuff. Oh yes, didn't have much of a social life though. A Friday night, I'd go to a restaurant, trip up the waiter and shout, "The server's down!" You can use that. My hero was my grandfather. He single-handedly broke the Enigma code machine. But I'm used to adversity. Oh yes, I always remember my mother saying to me, "You can eat the leftovers in the fridge." I almost froze to death. My grandmother, she's been talking about downsizing, and now she's in a little urn. My enduring memory of my grandmother, though, she always gave us raisins. Birthdays, Christmas, always raisins. In fact, we used to call her Peshwari Nan. Sometimes people ask me where I get my trousers. Once a year, I travel to South America. I walk 4 days into the jungle. Eventually, I come to the tallest tree. There's a tree house on the top. There's a hermit who lives in it. And he phones the other hermit in the Himalayas. And he orders them for me on the internet. The first job I ever had was washing dishes at an international radar station. But the dishes were a lot bigger than I thought they were going to be. You need to know something, though, ladies and gentlemen. I've spent some time in the secret services. Yes, the ones between Swansea and Cardiff on the M4. Where all the signs are encrypted. I'm not in Welsh. I'm not quite sure why I lost my job with MI5 as an interrogator, and I didn't like to ask. They said they'd reports of me defecting in a stairwell. I said they needed to read the reports more carefully. Maybe it was that time I was supposed to plant bombs under ships in the harbour. I accidentally filled all our breathing equipment with nitrous oxide. I mean, we laughed about it at the time. Maybe it was the other time. I woke up in the middle of the night. There was a beautiful woman in my bedroom. I said, "Who are you? What do you want?" She looked at me and said, "Nikita." And sure enough, when I woke up in the morning, my radiator was missing. People say to me, "Islamophobia." I say, "No, lamb is a type of meat." It's not a phobia. I mean, you might have a phobia of lamb if when you were little you fell into a shepherd's pie. We've all done it. Oh, yes. There's some strange people out there, Jim, but that woman who was arrested at Gatwick Airport this morning. 7 baby porcupines in a pillowcase. I don't know how some people sleep at night. Moped crime. A scourge of our streets. I saw a moped coming towards me the other day. I waited. As he was going past, hota! Took him off. Just as well, when I opened up what he had in the back, he'd clearly just stolen a human heart. I probably saved a life there. Anyway, got home from work the other day and my wife was wearing this slinky number, which only really worked when she went downstairs. Always struggled with relationships. February the 13th, just before Valentine's Day, 11:30 at night, find me running round a late-night garage looking for a girlfriend. Then one day my neighbour said to me, "The grass is always greener on the other side. The grass is always greener on the other side." I thought that he was saying that I was jealous of him. But it turns out I'd laid my astroturf upside down. When I was a teenager, I had a friend who went off the rails. I said to him, "Thomas." The geeks are clapping, ladies and gentlemen. The Thomas the Tank Engine joke. One of my earliest memories is my mum feeding us, saying, "There's a train coming, there's a train coming." We'd always eat it, because we knew that if we didn't, she wouldn't untie us from the railway line. My mother, she's got to the stage now where all she does is go on about who's just died.
"Do you remember Muriel? She's just died. Do you remember Arthur? He's just died."
I said, "Mum, get off the roof and give me the gun." I was sitting in traffic the other day and I got run over. Don't talk to me about unemployment. I come from a tiny fishing village in Derbyshire. We have some amazing cities in this country. London. Anyone else proud of a city in this country? Anyone in the audience?
Manchester.
Manchester. I spent Christmas in Manchester just to go into the Royal Mail depot, see all the postmen going, "Sorted, sorted, sorted." One more city? Bristol. Bristol. Any others? Cardiff. I've got a cousin who lives in Cardiff, keeps all his money under a mattress on the grounds that no thief would ever think of looking in the front garden. Could have been anywhere. Recently, I was just to the north of London, and it turns out, like a lot of people these days, I am, in fact, Luton intolerant. Sometimes people ask me where I get my shoes. Once a year, Nikita. Once a year, I travel to the Antarctic. I walk 4 days into the ice. Eventually, I come to an igloo. There's a hermit who lives in it, on a frozen lake. Although he was supposed to come to me this year. Apparently, the babysitter fell through at the last minute. Well, it's nice to have been here, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yes. We don't know much about Galileo. He was a poor boy from a poor family. Well, as you've heard, best line tonight, of course, it's difficult to build an aeroplane when it's flying and losing height. That's a bit how I feel now. Thank you, Canada. But I'll leave you with a word of advice. Never, ever do any washing up in your entire life. I've got 4 rooms full of the stuff. I'm just waiting for a close relative to die and a neighbor to come round and say, listen, if there's anything I can do. Have a nice evening. That's all from me. Good night. And now, over to Emmanuel over there.
Once again from Milton Jones. Thank you very much to everyone that's joined today. Thank you to our panel that has been here with us today. Join us again. We'll be back next month on the 22nd of July, where we will be discussing how to reimagine the customer experience to drive business results. Until then, we shall see you next week. Thanks for joining us.